From CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede and welcome to Facing South Florida. There was some major news this week surrounding vaccine distribution in Florida. On Friday, the Biden administration announced they were opening what they described as 4 major new vaccination centers in Florida. The federal sites will be in Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and Jacksonville. The White House expects the sites to be open in 2 weeks and provide a total of 12,000 shots a day. This will be in addition to the hundreds of smaller sites being operated by state and local officials. The other big news, the person who has been overseeing the state's logistical response to the pandemic, Jared Moskowitz, announced he was stepping down as Florida's Director of Emergency Management as of April 30th. Moskowitz, a Broward Democrat who served in the state legislature, has been part of the DeSantis administration from the beginning. I spoke to him earlier this week after the announcement was made. So Jared, why now?
Well, I mean, Jim, I know sometimes we always hear people say this because it makes for a good story, but in my case, it's tremendously true. Obviously, my family lives in Broward County. I'm up here working in Tallahassee, as the governor said yesterday. That in a transportation sense, it's kind of a world away. I'm spending 12 hours in a car to see my kids for 36 hours. It's just not sustainable. And the truth of the matter is I had been teetering, on this because the work here is just so important. It's been an honor of a lifetime to serve, to help Florida's families in, their worst crisis in 100 years. But my 4-year-old, as I was putting him into a car seat, said to me, Daddy, you work for the governor. And I said, that's right, buddy. And he said, I don't want you to work for the governor anymore. I want you to come home. And on the 3rd anniversary of the shooting at Parkland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, which is my hometown, my high school, those are parents that had plans for their kids. Those are parents that were looking forward to weddings and marriages and careers with their children. And I just, this pandemic also makes me realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so my kids are only young once. I'm missing things that I can never get back. And I want to leave the state in a good spot, which is why I'm not leaving until April 30th. But, look, it's time to go home to my family.
And just to be absolutely clear, this is not you being asked to step down. This is not you leaving because of any policy dispute that you have with the governor. This is truly, as you sort of noted, you always hear leaving to spend more time with his family. You're saying that is truly, absolutely the case here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, one of the things you know about me, Jim, and hopefully, the time we've spent together doing these Zooms, people will see that I say what I want to say, and I mean what I say, right? There's no filter here. There's no talking points. I say the truth. So, look, if I was being pushed out or there was some disagreement over policy, I mean, I would tell you. And there's none of that. I mean, I had a great meeting with the governor last week. As soon as I explained to him the kid thing, he recalled about when he served in Congress and what that was like. And he's got 3 young kids. Him and the First Lady totally get it. Obviously, they're sad to see me go, but he's appreciative of my service. We started talking about other things and policies and what the next couple of months will look like, what we need to accomplish. But it was a positive conversation. I think he made some additional comments at a press conference yesterday. I wish him and the First Lady the best, obviously, but look, sometimes you got to reprioritize things, and truthfully, I was in Parkland over the weekend. I went back to the high school. I went back to the memorial there. I talked to some of the families, and I just realized, like, my youngest was 2 when I took this job. He's now 4. I mean, I left when he was a toddler. I spent tremendously more time away from them because of this pandemic than I anticipated. My family quarantined without me. 90 days they quarantined. I didn't see my family, and so I've just gotten a appreciation for needing my kids to have both their parents be present. I mean, I want to do some mundane stuff. I want to drop my kids off at school. I want to pick them up. I know that when you don't do that for a long period of time, you look forward to that. And so, as I've told people, I'm not done with public service forever. I'm hitting the pause button for now. This is 15 years in public service. I got elected when I was 25 years old as a law student living in my parents' house. I'm 40 now. I found myself at the center of 2 of Florida's greatest tragedies. I'll leave that up to a higher power to decide why I was in the middle of Parkland and the pandemic. But I've given the state of Florida everything I have in both of those instances. And now, look, I've put Florida's families first for a long time, and now it's time for me to put my family first for a period of time.
Look, as we get closer to your end date on April 30th, we can sort of revisit, sort of take a look back over your time and how this has played out. But let's turn to the present, because there's still work to be done. And as you said, you're still in office now, going to do this for the next couple of months. Where do we stand right now as it relates to vaccines? And I think what most people are interested in is, if you're not 65 or older, if you're under 65, when might you be able to get the vaccine?
Yeah, so obviously that's the number one question I get asked, is when's the next group? I mean, look, it's totally dependent on supply and demand. Supply is picking up. The Biden administration has done a fantastic job. They were handed a complete mess on production and distribution. And so they're doing everything they can. There's no easy button to fix that, by the way. But we've gotten increases week over week. We're also getting information about what the next several weeks will look like. So I've been told my allocations will increase 10% every week for the next 3 weeks. So that's an additional 35,000 doses a week. That's tremendously helpful. So look, we've done about 2 million seniors. We're coming up on about 2 million seniors. That's about 50% of the population. Not everyone's going to want it. So I think we probably got another million seniors to go. We're doing 350,000 right now a week. So I think, 3 more weeks or so, we can start looking at, the next group. So whether that's lowering the age to 60, which would include 1.4 million people, whether that's looking at police officer, teachers based on some age range. And so those are obviously conversations I have to have with the governor. One of the things I want to talk about, obviously, is continuing to do more people with comorbidities. I mean, look, Florida started with 65. We were the first state in the nation to do so. We got a lot of criticism doing that. But now the CDC saw what we've done, and they've recommended that to all the other 49 states. So the data showed 80% of our deaths are in 65 and older. Obviously, the rest is people with comorbidities, so we can't forget about them. We reduce the death rate. We reduce hospitalizations. We start to get out of the health crisis that the pandemic has caused, and then we can start going to the general population so that we can start getting out of this pandemic and decreasing the amount of disease we have in the community.
You talk about the difference between what the promises were during the Trump administration and what was left for the Biden administration. How is the relationship with the Biden administration, and what is working, and what can we see, or what can we expect is going to be built on?
The relationship with the Biden administration is fantastic. I mean, FEMA's in the building. We're talking to FEMA all the time. We're planning some things for the residents of Florida to try to increase, vaccine distribution here. And so, look, they were handed, literally a worst case scenario. They took over the administration. There was no production plan. There was no distribution plan, and everything we were told in October or November literally did not happen. And so I think the previous administration, worked with scientists, got a vaccine, did a really good job shipping that vaccine, but had literally no distribution plan, and their production plan was a complete failure. So there's no easy button to fix those things. I think the Biden administration has literally done the best job that anyone could be doing with the cards that they have been dealt. I think obviously communicating and being transparent is also extremely important, which is what they've been doing, saying, look, this is what your doses are going to be for the next several weeks. Remember, I used to tell you, I'm only getting information and then I have 6 days to plan. That was the case for 2 months. Hey, this is what you're getting you tell me on a Tuesday what I'm getting on a Monday. Now I can plan 2 or 3 weeks ahead. We're already planning to open up sites in the future. We're planning where those are going to go, planning announcements, talking about the next couple of groups, because I know what my future is. I know what the next 2 or 3 weeks is going to be, rather than getting 500,000 doses in week 2, and then in week 3 that going to 280,000 doses, and almost 50% decline. You
said before FEMA is now in the building. I would have assumed that FEMA had always been part of the Emergency Command Center in the state of Florida. Was it not? And what does that actually mean now that they are?
Well, I mean, look, we were always communicating, coordinating with FEMA on the phone, especially very on when it had to do with PPE. But no, they weren't in the building because of obviously COVID and COVID protocols. And now they are here because we're doing some, planning and preparation. I don't want to get ahead of the White House or the governor's office, but I think there's going to be some good announcements here, later this week on vaccine expansion in a number of areas in the state of Florida. It's very, very exciting. And so, look, this is what the federal government should be doing, right? The federal government shouldn't divert things away from the state. They should be adding value, and that's why they're here to add that value, to work with us, to help our residents. And again, Jim, I mean, we've done 3.5 million people here in the state of Florida, 2 million of them seniors. We're leading the nation in seniors more than any other state. We're right at the top below California and Texas on doses administered. So we're the third largest state, and we're third. As far as first doses in the 10 most populous states, we're right at the top. Doses per 100,000 administered. So, we're back to the whole, percentage of allocation. We're almost at 80% now of our allocation. The other 20% are second doses that obviously have to wait until their second dose appointment is due. So we're using everything we're getting. The distribution model is working. But look, I'm very appreciative of the Biden administration and what FEMA is trying to do to try to speed this up. Dr. Fauci has said, in April it should really be flowing. I'm hopeful it's before then. There's a tremendous demand for this vaccine, and we're seeing the results. That hope, that light at the end of the tunnel, we're seeing it. The numbers are coming down, the hospitalizations are coming down. The anxiety that people have had for a year is starting to be released. So, look, I'm going to help land this plane hopefully over the next couple of months, really get things rocking and rolling. But look, I can't wait until the fall until everyone's been vaccinated.
Up next, the push for immigration reform when we return.